Today we're going to spend some time walking through the underlying causes of gut issues, why it's becoming such a common thing in America that we're having underlying gut issues, problems, and disorders. And then we're going to walk through action steps on how to work on getting your gut healthy naturally. So we're going to walk through lifestyle change, we're going to walk through supplementation, we're going to walk through the testing that you can order within our office to get down to the root cause of some of these things. And the goal for today is to really help you guys leave with applicable action steps, things that you can implement today, tomorrow, to start working on being healthier overall, okay? So I'm going to probably ask a couple quiz questions too to keep you guys alert. I do have some prizes as well. So for those paying attention and willing to answer and get some questions right, we've got treats for you guys as well. Okay. So a lot of you guys are patient. Some of you guys are first-time guests here. Just what we exist for you is for you guys. We exist to do this to you guys. Our mission here is to help let you guys live the best life possible through an intentional focus on your health. Okay. How many places strive at doing that we live in the world, right? Like when we're driving by places in our car, what I think and what I like rampantly teach my team is that there's a big problem that we have in the world right now, is that everything is based around ease and comfort and being cheap and giving you instant gratification for things, and a lot of those things are the reason why we have the problems that we have today, okay? Those things are the reason why we get pushed away from health. I mean, who drove from a long way to get here? You guys drove from like an hour and a half, right?
45 minutes.
45 minutes, okay. Anyone else drive from Wise to get here? Just an idea, how many fast food restaurants do you think you guys passed on the way here? It's unbelievable, right? It's almost that it's hard to find a good place to eat anymore that actually uses healthy things. And so the problem, if you guys want like just the overarching answer is like why we have all these gut issues and problems, we live in a world where it's tough to maintain your health. You have to actively now seek and do things that are really swimming upstream to be healthy, okay? And so today we're going to spend the massive bulk of our time talking about GI and gut health. And you know, this has not been like a new concept that the gut is important for health. In fact, going back 3,000 years, you know, Hippocrates was famous for talking about nerves being the cause of disease. And so at that time when people were sick, you know, they were you know, cutting things out of them, they were laying them out in the sun and baking them for 8 to 12 hours a day, leeches, doing weird things to try to work on getting people healthy. And he was one of the fathers of modern medicine who said, you know, I really believe there's this nerve problem that can cause health issues. And so now what we're seeing is that the gut really, it has kind of an epitome for causing problems. These are things like autoimmune diseases, brain disorders, cancer, fatigues, joint pains, mood problems, learning disabilities, pregnancy complications, asthma, allergies, these autoimmune disorders. A lot of these things, if not all of these things, are rooted in an unhealthy gastrointestinal system. And so what we believe in our office is this, is that your body is designed to heal. Your body is designed to function well. And so all too often we get kind of caught up in the world that we live in where there's these two massively, I'm going to skip forward a little bit, there's these two massively disconnected systems in the world that we live in, okay? There's allopathy and vitalism. And what a lot of like the current medical system is rooted and grounded in is something known as an allopathic model, okay? What they believe really is that the body is the sum of its parts, that there's just one cause to one specific disease, and that doing the opposite of something cures it. So like if you have an infection, we kill it with an antibiotic. If you have a virus, we kill it with an antiviral, right? If you have depression, we give antidepressants, right? And this idea that we're trying to build health through pharmaceutical and surgical interventions is what I really believe is what's caused a lot of problems. Has it saved a lot of lives in certain conditions? Absolutely. You know, when antibiotics were first introduced, it was something that dramatically increased longevity in the world. Now, the same thing that saved us is the same thing that we're worried about is going to kill us. What research experts are estimating is that by the use of antibiotics over the last 40, 50, 60, 70 years, we've progressed the evolution of bacteria roughly 2 billion years. And so what we're doing, and you guys may have heard of this before, is that we're creating superbugs. We're creating antibacterial or antibiotic-resistant bacterium that can survive in our body no matter what. And the concern that they have is over the course of the next few decades, that we're no longer going to be able to use antibiotic medicine because the bacteria are going to become completely resistant to it, and then we'll be kind of back to square one, okay? And so the idea here is that, you know, in our camp, we talk about something known as vitalism. So this is that your body functions as this coordinated, energetic energy that disease only exists in the absence of homeostasis. So in order for someone to be sick or not be well, there's something that their body is missing that's vital to them functioning properly. And that instead of, you know, looking at what pill, potion, lotion do I give them to build health, we ask, where is this person deficient? Where is this person toxic? What do they have too much of that they don't need in their body? Or what do they have not enough of that they desperately need to get back to a homeostatic level? And I think that the more that we start to look at the body in this manner, that the body has these definite needs for health, then the faster we're going to get back to being a healthy society and a healthy person, okay? So this idea is that the body is always intelligent. It's always doing the right thing. And so if your body is sick, oftentimes it's adapting to an abnormal stress. And so our whole goal today is to really help uncover those guys for you guys, help you understand where those problems are coming from, and really work on getting you back towards good health, okay? As a quick reminder with this, okay, this note packet up here is what I think all of you guys should have on your phone right now. If you guys came in late, if you ask the team, they can help you get to it as well via like our Instagram. But a lot of the notes are on here as well, so if you guys don't want to kill your pens, you can look on here and then add on things afterwards as well, okay? So, for a Max Living shaker bottle prize, if you guys paid attention at all, we had some workshop notes on here. First one to raise your hand and answer. The gut is known in the body as the second what?
Brain.
Whose hand went up? Your hand went up first. Great. Okay, awesome. Great job. Give a round of applause. Yeah, awesome. Okay, so this whole grade school thing, sorry guys. So what controls function in the body? Okay, it is the nervous system. And so if you guys are patients in our office, you've already heard us talk ad nauseum about the function of the nervous system. And most of the time in the office, we talk about the central and peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system meaning your brain and spinal cord. That's really where your body exhibits life and functions properly. You have something called your peripheral nervous system. Those are how the nerves emanate and branch out to every single cell, tissue, and organ inside of your body, okay? And so the job of your central nervous system, of your peripheral nervous system, is to gather information from the outside environment, tell your brain what it needs, and then your brain is the master healer, the master control center of your body. That's what heals everything in your body, right? So that's your central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. That's why we care about the spine. That's why we care about adjusting you guys. We're going to talk about the spine and nerve pathways and how those correlate to the gut as well. But if this is your first talk here, we're going to introduce you guys to an entirely different type of nervous system, and that's something called your enteric nervous system. Everyone say enteric? Enteric. So if you guys haven't heard this before, there's a second nervous system inside of your body, and that's why they call your gut the second brain. Okay, so your gut has second only to your brain in number of nerve cells. There's more than 100 million nervous cells inside of your GI tract. You guys have been in a weird situation before and like, I had a weird gut feeling about this, right? It's unique. They're not sure if your gut is truly capable of comprising a thought, but they're sure that it does something, right? And so your gut has the largest amount of influence over your brain, okay? How is that? Well, a lot of the neurotransmitters that actually function inside of your brain, the ones that control satiation, thought, mood, affect, depression, sleep-wake cycles, they are in fact produced in the gut. In fact, 95% of your body's serotonin, half of the dopamine is produced inside of your body's gastrointestinal system or your GI tract, okay? And so the more we talk about all these little things, the more I think in your guys' brain you should be piecing together like, oh my gosh, so what you're telling me is like the hormones that produce how my body feels are made in my gastrointestinal tract. If you walk to me up off the street, you'd say, well, how does a bad gut cause someone to be depressed? And then you learn this and you're like, oh wow, so an unhealthy gut can't make proper amounts of neurotransmitters, so my brain doesn't have what it needs to actually function well on a daily basis, right? This is wild stuff, right? We know that when the gut works well, your body is able to actively respond to, engage, and beat off foreign invaders. So it's estimated somewhere between 60 and 80% of our immune system is housed inside of our gastrointestinal system. So a healthy gut leads to a healthy body. And an unhealthy gut, well, that leads to issues, right? So when we have an unhealthy GI tract, it especially increases our risk of developing autoimmune disorders, okay? If the gut can't work well, the gut can't kill off bad things that shouldn't be inside of us. And so in oftentimes cases, our gut can become so disheveled that our body turns out to attacking itself. So we'll talk about it today, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, celiac disease, autoimmune disorders like asthma, allergies, eczema. Those are where the body is actually attacking itself incorrectly, where the body should always be doing things to protect itself. Now, one of the brains is turned on the other one, and instead of helping itself, it's attacking and hurting itself, right? We're going to show you why that happens and how to work on getting these things better naturally, because not all autoimmune diseases are things you just have to live with for the rest of your life. If you fix the cause, the body's made to heal, okay? So we'll talk today about the microbiome, the gut microbiome. So who's heard of that before? Right? So this is the trillions of bacteria, viruses, and fungi, all which are collectively called the gut microbiome, that sits inside of your GI tract. You have roughly 3 to 5 pounds of bacterium inside of your gut by weight. And by cell size, since these bacteria oftentimes are smaller than our cells, you have more bacterium in your body than you do human cells in your body. So by number and constituency, you are more bacteria than you are human, which is kind of wild to think about, right? Crazy, right? And so where are we right now as a culture? Unless you're living under a rock, or you don't have any friends, or all your friends are in extremely good health, you guys might see what I see, where I take care of a lot of what I would call beautiful people who have a lot of problems, right? I take care of some of the most healthy, like best looking people on the outside that you guys can imagine. You just look around, right? See? Anyways. No one even looked, no one even commented. Looking straight forward here. But the reality is that, well, thank you, so you guys. So the reality is a lot of us have issues, right? And so I spent some time just like pulling these things up for you guys, because I start making these talks and I talk to my patients and I'm like, are my patients the only ones who have problems? Like, is this just, we're in this small little microcosm? But the reality is it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere. And then I have people that I come into contact with in the world, like I'm out here, I'm around restaurants, and I can't help but talk about what we do. And I'll meet a server at a restaurant, or I'll play volleyball with someone or whatever, and then they come into the office and I'm like, this person though, they've got it all together. And all of a sudden, they're another case of someone who has all these issues and problems and somehow puts on a mask. So the reality is, if you're having gut issues, problems, you are 100% not alone. If you're not perfectly healthy, guess what? No one else around you is either. We're all working towards this thing in a world that's made it extremely challenging to be truly healthy from the inside out. And honestly, there's no shortcuts here. I'm not going to give you any magic solutions. It takes work. But the reality is that a lot of us have issues. I mean, just listen to this. So IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. 10 to 15% of the population has irritable bowel syndrome, right? Chronic constipation, 16% of the globe, 2% of Americans regularly. Diarrhea, 6.6% of US adults. Inflammatory bowel disease, 3 million Americans, that's like 1.5%, right? GERD, 20% of the US has reflux, has acid reflux, right? Which affects sleep, which affects esophageal health, which means you're not digesting food properly. That's 1 in 5. Bloating, up to 30% of people experience regular bloating, right? 1 in 3 people, regular bloating. Nausea, around 10 to 20% of people experience nausea frequently. And that's a side effect of these things like GERD, gastroparesis, which is delayed stomach emptying, food intolerances, dyspepsia or indigestion, right? 15% of the US, right? Gastroparesis, again, delayed stomach content emptying. 10 men and 40 women per 100,000 people. Abdominal pain is 13 to 20% of US adults. Heartburn, 20% of Americans, right? So you add up those numbers and it's like, what percentage of us actually suffers with problems like this? In the study that I pulled these things from, it's like 67% of people have GI issues and problems, and some effects, some more minor, some more major. But if you're having issues like this, you're not alone, absolutely. Almost half the population now suffers from at least one chronic illness, diagnosable disease or illness. And so this is the system we're going to talk about today that really affects your body wholeheartedly. This is your GI tract. So we're talking top to bottom, mouth to anus, everywhere in between. We're going to go through how it functions and how to work on correcting these things. So there's a lot of these warning signs that your GI tract is not functioning properly, okay? So if you guys have problems like bloating, sleep quality issues, if you have trouble going to the bathroom, if you have nausea, diarrhea, fatigue, weight loss resistance, brain fog, depression, arthritis, these are all warning signs that your body's not functioning properly, okay? And so we'll start with talking about a few of these issues. And what I really want to highlight for you guys is kind of what the conventional model is currently saying about these issues versus where we look at these issues as an underlying cause problem, okay? So let's talk acid reflux, okay? So acid reflux is where you eat food and it doesn't digest properly, and then later on you get something known as heartburn, right? And so I talk to a lot of people who carry Tums in their purse or in their wallet because of this issue. They deal with it a lot. And this conventional wisdom, when I talk to patients, or this conventional thought is that, yeah, my body is just, I have too much acid in my stomach right now. Has anyone heard that term before? Right? Like I eat and then I think my body makes too much acid. So what do? Is I take an antacid, okay? The doctors say that I don't have a good sphincter. Like the food's not getting held down in my stomach properly, it's weak, and so my stomach acid's coming up, okay? So commonly people are given antacid medication, they take Tums, they take things to calm down the acid pumps inside of your body, okay? This drives me absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy, and here's why, okay? For the vast majority of us, as we age, our ability and affinity to digest, break down, absorb and assimilate food stuff decreases. It doesn't increase. The only thing that like increases when you age is like the size of your ears and your nose. You're not like digesting food better at 70 than you are at like 15. Like ask my children, I'm pretty sure they can eat Legos or like a little rubber tire and digest it, break it down and turn it into muscle, right? So the older you get, the harder it is to typically break down food. And so this idea that our body is making too much stomach acid is one of the worst lies I've ever heard in my life, okay? The reality is this is what's happening for a lot of us. We don't have healthy bacterium inside of our gut. Our stomach acid is usually weak because we lack a lot of the enzymes to break down food. And so it's not that we make too much acid, it's that we don't have enough acid. And without properly digesting our food inside of our stomach and churning that food stuff sits in our stomach. And with the acid in there, it starts to ferment. And so what we're feeling is not acid because we just make so much that we just have too much coming in there. It's because we don't have enough and the food is not emptying out properly. And that fermentation is pushing the acid up into our esophagus. Okay? And so the idea here is I'd rather you guys fix the issue than try to cover up the symptom. The antacid is going to kind of block that acid from happening, but inside of that what happens is you're not digesting food properly. So there's a difference there that we work on is we actually give people digestive enzymes and acid to break the food stuff down better. In 99% of patients we see this massive increase in their body's ability to have less GERD, digest food better, and actually absorb and assimilate it better, okay? There are also nerve deficiencies when it comes to this. So when we talk about how the body works, you have this gut system, and then you also have this central and peripheral nervous system, your body's nerves. So the nerves that control and innervate the upper half of your digestive tract primarily are the nerves that come out of the top of your neck, okay? And that nerve is called the vagus nerve. Has anyone heard that nerve before? Okay. Vagus, or vaga, is from the Latin term vagabond. It's also known as the wandering nerve. So your vagus nerve is the largest nerve in your body, okay? So it comes out here, top part of your neck. It controls cardiovascular function, respiratory, and it controls the whole entire upper half of your digestive system, okay? So the vagus nerve is extremely responsive to stress, okay? Your vagus nerve is responsible for keeping you alive, okay? You know what I'm talking about? So here's what happens. So when the vagus nerve is highly activated, it downregulates the digestion in your body, okay? The idea is this is the fight or flight nerve. So if you're stressed, if you're irritated, if you're in a fight for your life, which is what your body assumes most often stress is, it shuts down your digestion. And this is called the general adaptation response. If you guys have heard me talk before, you've heard this before, but like if a bear walks in the room right now, your body is not concerned with digesting lunch, okay? It's either gonna stop digesting it or it's gonna get it out very quickly so that you can run away from the bear, okay? But it's not sitting here breaking it down. Your body is not trying to heal when you're fighting for your life or running, okay? When you are stressed, your body intelligently, again, our environment has changed rapidly in the last 100 years, but our physiology has not, okay? When we are stressed, your body pushes all the blood to your extremities, so to your back, to your arms, to your legs. Whenever you guys get stressed, you feel like the tension in your neck. That's that stress response, right? But it's down-regulating immune system function, gastrointestinal function, it's raising heart rate, it's raising cortisol and cholesterol levels so that you can fight for your life, right? So when you activate this nerve, this causes problems, okay? And commonly when we adjust patients and we're taking care of you guys from a chiropractic sense, most of our patients have problems where? In their neck, right? Because what are we doing all day long? We're sitting at a desk, we're looking forward like this, we're sitting on our cell phones all day long. I mean, we have problems a lot of places in our spine, but far and away the most common one that I see is this upper cervical part of the spine, where normally we should have a healthy curve or arc through here, and this whole area is shifted forward. It causes a lot of damage through there, okay? So in addition to like looking at the acid in the stomach, we think, okay, is the digestive system being stimulated properly? If there's a nerve deficiency here, I can give you all the food and supplements in the world, but if this is still blocked, there's no way that your body's gonna function well. If you're still in a fight or flight state, nervous system's not working well, we have to clear that first, okay? Starting to make some sense, you guys? Through here? Awesome, okay. So we're gonna go through solutions later, but that's commonly what we see with problems like acid reflux, okay? Then we have irritable bowel syndrome or irritable bowel disease. Conventionally speaking, we say that this is an unknown cause. So if you go to your doctor, and this is when I work with patients, I commonly ask them the question, we sit down for 5 essentials or nutrition consults, I'll say, hey, where are you at in this? Like what did your doctors tell you is the cause of this? And every time, it's like, they don't know. They don't know. They don't know what causes it. And the reality is that there's something in your lifestyle that's more than likely causing that, right? But I don't commonly meet with people who sit with the doctor for 20 to 30 minutes or who has them fill out a nutritional survey, a diet summary, a supplement protocol summary, history to see what's going on with them, and actually look at those things and say, oh, well, you've been eating a diet filled with fast food, Lunchables, and wheat thins for the past 30 years. Maybe that's causing some of your issues. They just say, we don't know what causes it, no idea. A lot of times with these problems too, they don't show up on labs. So you might see some general markers, but a lot of common lab tests that they run are only going to test for generalized inflammation, right? If you get lucky. If they just run basic panels, you may not see anything on there in the beginning. And in the same way, ordering imaging on it oftentimes won't show it in the early phases as well. So if we're ordering like a colonoscopy or an x-ray or a CT scan, in the early stages, you may not see them visibly. Meaning if we put a camera inside of you, you're only looking at macro. They're not putting a microscope inside of you. Does that make sense? It'd be hard to fit, right? So the idea here is that there's these underlying functional issues and problems. Again, we go back to the vagus nerve, right? If you have irritable bowel syndrome or irritable bowel disorder, if there's not stimulation to your gut, if you're extremely hypersympathetic, meaning your body's in fight or flight all day long and your body's not digesting food, that undigested food sits in your GI tract. So one of two things is happening. It's either sitting for longer or your body's ejecting it so rapidly that it's irritating the lining of the colon of the small and large intestine. So again, we check neurological deficiencies and problems, okay? We check for problems with the sphincters as well, for weak colon muscles. We look to see, are there underlying issues going on at a microscopic level? Do you have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which we'll talk about in a few minutes? Do you have pathogenic infections? Are there yeasts or parasites present in your gut? Do you have toxicity from exposure to pesticides or chemicals? Do you have a truly leaky gut, which we'll talk about? A leaky gut's a real thing, we'll go through that. Do you have food sensitivities? Are you developing these weird aversions to food that make you oddly, uniquely sick compared to the other people around you when you eat something like chicken or eggs or broccoli, right? Do you have this chronic stress and anxiety? Is there this mental component to why you're having these issues and these problems going on? If you're having issues like this, these are all the things that you have to think about and look at, and not just a general lab panel of a CBC and a CMP from your doctor, okay? So something that very commonly happens when we start developing these issues is we develop something known as SIBO, or small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, okay? We should have bacteria in our small and large intestine, absolutely. But when we have damage to our digestive tract, what very commonly happens is that the bacteria that is supposed to be in our large intestine starts migrating north, upstream, into our small intestine. So if you have problems like bloating, like constipation, like diarrhea, it can go either way. If you eat a meal and all of a sudden you feel like puffy, like distended, that's a huge warning sign of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And this is where there's abnormal amounts of bacteria inside of your small intestine that shouldn't be there. And when they interact with food, they create gas and they cause this bloating effect in the body, especially after meals. As many as 80% of people who have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, also have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, okay? And there are specific ways to work on correcting this. We'll spend a little bit of time going through it, and then we'll have some resources for you guys afterwards. So this is not like a be-all and all talk, this is the starting point of your journey, or continuing your journey if you're already here, but there's a specific way that you have to eat if you have this problem, right? And the weird thing with some of these issues is it's not just clean foods, right? With SIBO, there's certain foods you cannot eat, there's certain things you have to do to basically rid the SIBO and get it out of you, okay? So, but those are things like abdominal pain, bloating, gas, constipation, diarrhea, nausea, acid reflux. Those are all warning signs that you may have this intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which can cause problems, okay? And this is why you really have to be diligent and work with someone who knows this stuff, because if you have SIBO, and a lot of us, when we have problems in our bowels, we tend to go for like the one thing that we think is helpful, which is a probiotic. Well, if you have intestinal bacterial overgrowth, the key word there being overgrown, you probably don't need a probiotic in the beginning. In fact, a lot of people take a probiotic with this and they feel worse because you're actually feeding the already overgrown bacteria inside of your gut and making more of them, and it's making the problem worse, right? So oftentimes you have to kill the bad bacteria first, or the overgrown bacteria first, and then fix it later, okay? And again, we're going to come back to all this stuff. I'm just going through some common problems now, but we're going to go through action steps before the end of it. So we'll circle back and hopefully clear up all the questions you guys have running in your head. And at the end, we'll have time for questions too. Okay? You guys with me so far? Good? Okay. So celiac disease. Okay, so celiac disease is not a disease in the conventional sense that you would think it is. It's not just a true autoimmune disease that's aggravated by a gluten allergy. Who knows someone who has celiac disease? Okay, a couple of you guys, okay. So oftentimes they talk about the fact that you're gluten-free and you're on meds for life, right? There's a lot of things that can cause this, though, in our lifestyle that we can see massively improve. And in fact, we have a lot of people who have celiac disease now in our office who can actually eat gluten, who have reversed it. And you can do that if you do the right things, okay? So number one, there's this gut-brain neurological deficiency. We've talked about this already. There's intestinal damage caused by zonulin. Zonulin is something that induces leaky gut autoimmunity. So if you guys are thinking about the gut and my beautiful artwork, the gut is a single cell. You have to think it's a single cell layer, okay, that runs top to bottom, 100 million cells long, okay? This is one of the fastest turnover sites in your body. These cells are replaced on a daily, weekly basis. Super fast turnover, okay? Inside of our gut, for our gut to work properly, you have something called gap junctions, okay? So in between the lining of the cells, there are these little tiny seals where the cells come together, okay? Is a gap between those, okay? It's very, very, very small, but that is where food goes from our GI tract into our bloodstream, okay? So basically they're shuttled through using enzymes so that properly digested food, broken down to its most micro form, can be transported across this barrier and get into our bloodstream and then go everywhere it needs to go to supply our body, okay? So for people who have a really bad gluten sensitivity, which is something like a celiac disease, their villi, the actual endings of the junctions here, they've gotten smaller. They're short and fat. And what happens is when this person eats gluten, it starts to increase zonulin and it spreads apart these gaps through here. And so let's say that these gaps should be like 1/20th of the width of a strand of hair. They're now like 1/5 of the width of a strand of hair, okay? And what leaky gut syndrome is, what we'll talk about, is that now with these gaps being larger, the only thing that was stopping food in our stomach from getting through here was these tiny gaps. now undigested food particles can actually filter through and into our bloodstream, okay? And when undigested food and bacteria goes from our GI tract into our bloodstream, remember, our GI tract is, technically speaking, this sounds weird, it's not inside our body. It's outside inside our body, because there's an opening at the top and the bottom. So it is truly speaking, if you think about it, it's the outside. It's kind of weird, right? So when things that are meant to be outside the inside of our body, are actually inside our body, they've passed through it in here, now they cause problems. This is what causes an immune reaction. This is where your body's like, oh my gosh, we have foreign invaders, you guys. We have things that shouldn't be here, right? So now what is your body doing? It's fighting a civil war on the inside, right? It's attacking itself essentially through here. And it's doing it on a daily basis because there's these problems through here, right? This is how we start to develop immune disease, not just gluten intolerance, not just celiac disease, but if we break down these gap junctions inside of our body, it causes a lot of issues. Now what I'll tell you is this, is that a small percentage of people have true celiac disease in the US, but the overwhelming majority of us have a small allergy to gluten, to especially hybridized, genetically modified wheat in the US, okay? When you're born as a kid, most experts agree that we should not even be able to digest gluten appropriately until we're 2 years old, okay? And so this idea that, and I've had some parents come in and say this, like, well, my baby doesn't sleep enough, so what do? Well, I add cereal to their formula, or I add powdered wheat to their things so that they sleep more, right? Because it distends their stomach. Again, your stomach is what makes dopamine and serotonin. That's what actually helps control your sleep-wake hormones. There's a reason a baby only sleeps 2 to 3 hours at a time, because they need to be fed constantly. That's the idea behind it. So when you overwhelm them with all this food stuff, and it massively increases their parasympathetic nervous system, or their sleeping, resting, digesting nervous system, yeah, it knocks them out. But you're also causing damage to the lining of their gut, right? So oftentimes in America, we wonder why we have problems. Well, it might have started all the way back at birth, right? When we were putting things in our body that we weren't meant to put in our body, and doing it to try to, get more sleep, which I get it. I've got 2 kids. I understand where they're coming from sometimes, but it can cause problems like this. And so although only a small percentage of us have celiac disease, most of us have some type of gluten intolerance, which is why I'm not a huge fan of chronically eating bread and wheat and grain and all of these things, even in a healthy individual, because over time it can cause these problems. And you guys can say, well, I eat it all the time, I have no issues or any problems like that. You might be one of the 1 or 2% who doesn't, but the vast overwhelming majority of you guys will eventually start to have problems because of it. And you may not associate it to that. It may be delayed response, but it's probably causing issues in your body, okay? The other side of this is that you can have this autoimmune or this toxin-induced leaky gut syndrome as well. And so with this, it's not just gaps that are created inside of your GI tract, but you can actually start to kill off the microvilli that are inside of your GI tract. And so the problem here is that this creates an even bigger gap channel. You're getting more food in here. So you can see people who have autoimmune disease like rheumatoid arthritis, like Sjogren's disease, like these diseases that literally start eroding the enamel of your bone. And I take care of patients who are 30, 35 years old who are having joint and hip replacements at a young age because they have so much arthritis, their body's literally eating itself, okay? And so with this problem here, you get this massive increase in cholesterol. Your body is essentially trying to do everything it can to wall off the walls of your intestine. And so people like this have cardiovascular disease, they develop high cholesterol, they have all these issues and problems. And again, it's because their gut is an absolute mess, but they've never worked on correcting it, they've never worked on fixing it. No doctor's ever sat them down and said, hey, here's how you actually walk through and fix the gut microbiome. They say, hey, get on a medication, sit on it for the rest of your life, and there's nothing you can do from a dietary nutrition standpoint to work on helping it, right? Because there's not one thing, it's everything. You know what I mean? My little sister, my wife's little sister, was 21 years old, and she started developing an autoimmune disorder, and I scoured for like a month looking for GI doctors in this area that could actually help her, that I actually thought would like really work with her, right? And so I found a GI doctor who actually owns a healthy food store, and I was like, this guy's got to be good, right? Like he has natural stuff, he sells healthy food, like this guy's got to be on it. She goes in and he's like, nope, you have ulcerative colitis, $3,000 lab panel, take this medication for the rest of your life. And my wife went to the meeting with him, and she's like, well, what foods can she eat to help with this? He's like, there's no research showing any foods are going to affect it. It's autoimmune, there's nothing you can do. And it drives you crazy, right? Like, this is our top trained gastroenterologists. And again, the problem comes back to they're not trained in food, they're not trained in nutrition. It's as different as night and day.
Yeah.
I can't talk about it. Well, it's everyone. That was the best. So you're not going to get any. You're not going to get any.
Yeah, that means there's no one.
That's the thing. And so yeah, I don't even remember his name, to be honest with you. But yeah, that's the problem. Is there's not really any who work in this. So the reality is you've got to work with someone in functional nutrition or in functional medicine who can actually work through these things with you, because the general consensus right now on that side is they do not recommend nutritional therapeutics for problems like this. And if they do it in a hospital setting and it's not approved, which I've heard some things are getting, but they're very slow, they're very behind, you know, they lose their job. They can't give you things outside of their scope or outside of their guidelines, okay? So Crohn's and ulcerative colitis, these are just different names for inflammation inside of the gut, and these are things that affect just different parts of it. So Crohn's disease has these skip lesions that affect all different parts of your large intestine. Ulcerative colitis is typically unique to the colon or to the lower part of the GI tract. But again, same thing, we say we don't know what caused it, it's autoimmune. You can see it now in a colonoscopy because it's much more severe. A lot of your basic labs can even show normal. You might see high cholesterol, and so they'll give you a statin for that. They're not going to fix your GI tract or your gut. You're going to be on a statin and a medication like that. And again, it's these same functional issues that we look for with this. Okay. We talked through leaky gut. That's the effects of what these things are. And again, a lot of times this manifests itself different ways. So in medicine, we have these different names to define them depending on how they manifest, but the underlying cause for a lot of these things is still the same, right? It's the poor environment that's led to this leaky gut, this immune response inside of the body, and that's where we need to work on kind of fixing these things, okay? So, 3-step process to really get to the bottom of these things and work on recovering and healing from them, all right? So the idea here is we want to find the cause, right? We want to remove those interferences, whatever the cause is. How do we get rid of those? And how do we restore balance? How do we get the body back to where it's supposed to function, okay? These are really the pillars that we're looking at when it comes to GI distress and problems. We're looking at answering these questions. Is it maldigestion? Meaning, am I not actually digesting food properly? Am I putting food in my mouth and it's not absorbing like it should be? Am I not getting the nutrients I need, okay? Do I have inflammation as an underlying marker of this? Is my body, inflamed? Is it heated? Is it irritated in that sense, right? Do I have a dysbiosis? So what I've talked about in parts is I've defined dysbiosis, but I haven't said the word. Dysbiosis is an abnormal consistency of bacterium in your gut, okay? So the microbiome, generally speaking, is off, okay? There's 130 different major species inside of your gut, and if they're not all playing nice and all in the right ratio, then you have utter chaos, right? If you select for one of those and it's super high, it really messes up the environment for everyone else, okay? It's kind of like pine trees. You guys know about pine trees? Pine trees make the soil acidic. So they change the environment of the soil around it so other plants can't grow around it. The same thing happens inside of the gut. So certain bacteria can change or alter the pH, or alter the environment, or alter the available nutrient pool. And then as those grow and get bigger, they can get overgrown, okay? And so sometimes if you have problems like this, you can't just say, oh, I'm just going to take a probiotic, because you're going to make these problems worse oftentimes as well, okay? Do I have a metabolic imbalance? Are number one, are my macros off? Am I not getting enough protein? Am I eating too much fat? Am I not getting enough carbohydrates? Are those the problems? Or can my body not absorb those properly and I'm not absorbing fat or carbohydrates or protein appropriately, right? Those are the questions we ask, and we have the test that can actually answer these questions as well. The last thing is, do I have an infection, right? Is my body has something in it that I need to get rid of? Is it a viral infection, fungal infection, yeast infection? What is going on in there, right? And so oftentimes when you have GI problems, if you've had them for a while and you really don't know the solutions for it, sometimes if you guys meet with us, we can help you figure out the problem based on your symptoms or strategy alone, but oftentimes we test. It's really hard when it comes to the gut sometimes to know all the answers just by how someone presents, because different things can present a little differently, but maybe even be the same issue, okay? And so what we use for this is something known as a GI effects test. It's this big like blue box like this, okay? So how do you measure the gut? You measure poop, okay? So this is how you look for those markers. Maldigestion, inflammation, dysbiosis, metabolic imbalance, infection. We measure these things and then we can work on figuring out what's going on through there, okay? So in a test like this, we get a total breakdown of exactly what's going on inside of your GI tract. We get a map of all 130 major species, which ones are good, which ones are bad, which ones are high, which ones are low, and then we know how to work on influencing those, right? Someone who has an infection in their gut, who has bloating and digestive disorders is going to be different from someone who has just inflammation or isn't breaking down foods properly. You would take care of those people differently. And so this is a great way of us really working towards like figuring out, okay, what is the answer? How do we work on doing these things, okay? So again, I said this is the start of the talk, right? This continues after this. So if you guys are having issues or problems with this, the first thing is you can order testing. And so you can do that today if you want to. This is written in your note packet. The normal cost of the stool assessment is $749 or $799. Today it's $749. So we're doing a discount on it because typically after these, we can put in a big batch order, the lab, and we get a discount. So we pass them along to you guys, okay? We get the results back in about 2 weeks, and then with this, we sit down with you guys, and it's anywhere from a 2 to 6 month protocol based on what's going on, and we can exactly map out what you guys need, okay? Questions so far? Have you got them? You're jumping.
We get zonulin.
Yeah.
What is that?
So zonulin is like a protein.
Okay.
And it's normally present in the body in normal amounts, but whenever it's too high, it breaks down the tiny molecules that form a gap junction between the layers. Yes. So too much zonulin will actually spread these layers apart. And there's different types of zonulin too. Like you're getting into micro. I don't want to go too enough with it, but zonulin is like a protein. When you eat too much of it, when you produce too much of it, it forces those gap junctions apart.
What causes it to produce too much, or is that going to?
It's the immune reaction. Yeah. So it's an immune reaction from a gluten sensitivity specifically. Yeah, that works on creating it.
So when you said in that one situation when the body's attacking itself, it's really not attacking itself, it's attacking the food particles that are not completely
Oftentimes,
digested.
yes. Oftentimes, yes. So when you think about like someone who has massive scale joint degradation, right? Your body has to maintain calcium balance in your bloodstream, right? You need 1% of your calcium to be in your bloodstream. Your body will strip everything out to make that happen because without that, you won't have the biochemical process that you need to live as a human. So it's going to pull from the bone to make sure that that's there. So people who have long-term digestive problems, they don't absorb properly, their bones break down. Like they tear at their calcium because your body's not worried about you having healthy bones at 80, it's worried about you living right now. Okay, so your body's always concerned with survival in the moment. So when people think my body's just dumb or whatever, no, it's trying to keep you alive, right? It always prioritizes survival in the moment versus longevity. Now we all want to live to 70, 80, 90, 100 in great health, right? You don't back into that. You front it into that with a strategy and a plan. Unless you're one of like the 5% of people that can drink and smoke all you want and live to 94. And we all know people like that. Because after this talk, someone will come up to me, and this doesn't happen in years, but someone will be like, you know, my grandpa, he drank and he smoked a pack a day and he, you know, whatever. Had Agent Orange all over him and, you know, all that stuff. And I'm like, I get it, man. I just wouldn't recommend that for everyone, you know? Like, the odds are you're not going to have that. And so there's actually been research on this that certain people have an overwhelming amount of glutathione production in their body. Their ability to produce antioxidants to prevent themselves against oxidative stress is abnormally high. So we all know those people who can't die no matter what they do, but it's not a good idea to follow their footsteps by and large, okay? I'm not one of those people. Like, I can't just get away with everything. I feel it, and I have friends who are just like tanks, and they can do whatever they want, and I'm like, that ain't me.
They're not 60 yet.
That ain't me. I know, right? Yeah. It'll catch up to them eventually, you hope.
I know that.
But then you don't. You want to be healthy. But anyways. Okay. So, as we talk about working, yes,
Can I
sorry.
throw a comment in there?
Yes.
I don't want to chase rabbits here, but just your thought on it. I think, in my opinion, because our food has changed so much and they're adding so much to our food, what those people were eating 60 years ago is not what we're eating.
Was it?
Correct. Yeah.
So is that part of the problem that we're seeing in that we deal with this, but people 20, 50 years ago
Didn't.
didn't?
Absolutely. Absolutely, that's a huge part of it. Yes, yes. So the reality is that we have, ideally speaking, now we have better access to technology than we've ever had, right? Better access to, honestly, medical care, to technology to store our food. I mean, 150 years ago, we had to have famines, right? Like we didn't have refrigeration. But now we're like a victim of our own success, right? Where our food supply is so extremely stable with shelf-stable foods, we can't go hungry, but also the food's poison.
It's killing us.
This is a horrible thing, right? Yeah, so it's a huge issue. And trust me, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I'll go through that stuff,
Today?
but no, yeah. We'll talk about that, okay? But so as we talk about this though, the big elephant we have to address in the room is this, okay? I'm gonna challenge you guys here. A lot of you guys probably know a lot of this stuff already that I'm talking about. And a lot of you guys probably don't implement it as well as you should, even though you know you should, okay? Fair? Pushing a nerve here? So how do you start doing that, right? And I think there's a lot of ways to do it. Number one is getting the right tools in your belt, okay? But there's like 3 overarching themes that I'll have in as we go through solution steps and also talking with you guys. But the reality is you've got to put an extraordinary amount of effort to it. There is no easy button with this. I will not talk about anything today that's like, oh, this is this super easy thing that makes it easy, right? So inside of your body, it's in your brain specifically, there's something known as a mid-cingulate cortex, okay? Who knows who's on the screen right now? Who knows the name of this person?
I don't know his name, but I know. I've
Yeah,
watched
what's the
him.
name?
Andrew Huberman.
Yep. So we're coming back from our vacation, and we're in LAX airport. I met him in the airport just last week. Yeah, yeah. I walked you to the bathroom, and he walked by me, and I was like, "That's Andrew Huberman." And he's a professor at Stanford. He's a PhD, and I think she's like neuroimmunology or something like that. But my hero. I thought he'd get swarmed by people, but apparently no one knows who he is. So anyways, so I go to the bathroom and I walk back, and he got the wrong gate, so he was walking this way, and we almost hit each other, and I was like, I don't want to scare you, I just want to say hi, big fan, we talked for a couple minutes. But I love this guy because he's talking about the brain and the centers behind motivation and what makes us tick, right? And so if you haven't listened to his podcast, he's got these brilliant podcasts where he goes in depth on certain things, right? And it's funny because in the very beginning when he started, he was, I think, very medically minded. Like, I'm research based, but my research is also very biased towards medicine. And just 3 weeks ago, he had another researcher on talking about toxicity, right? And so he's doing what I was doing 5 years ago. People, I thought I was crazy, where I was like, stop drinking out of plastic bottles. There's BPAs and phthalates in plastic bottles that affect your sex hormones, right? And now 5-10 years later from this, they have all this research and data that's saying, no, this is exactly what happens. Like, the reason birth rates are so low is because of phthalates and these forever chemicals that are in our bodies, and we have to turn this around immediately and doing it. In the beginning, he wasn't talking about that. Now he's like drinking the Kool-Aid, but he's doing it at this high level because science is catching up with what we've really thought about and philosophically believed that your body does not need all these chemicals in it. It's better off without it, right? So, getting back to what I was talking about, the mid-cingulate cortex is the area that's associated with willpower, okay? And so what it probably comes down to for a lot of us is we don't have that willpower to make the good decisions when no one's around, okay? So how do you do it then? Well, what I'm telling you is on the other side of the rainbow, it's really, really easy. But in someone who has consistently made not the best decisions, we'll just say when it comes to your health, your mid-cingulate cortex shrinks. So what happens is you lose will. But the reality is that you have this ability to be super strong and say, I'll just say it out, no to the cookies, no to the bad stuff, no to the bad food, yes to the things that build health, yes to delayed gratification when it comes to your health, but the answer is you have to start now. And one time of saying no to something bad or yes to something good slowly starts to build that mid-cingulate cortex. And so the thought process is the person who's extremely disciplined and rigid, and you look at them like, God, that person's so, I couldn't do that. I couldn't live my life with that little pleasure, like the person who's just really healthy, does everything right, is super disciplined, wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning, never eats a grain of sugar whatsoever. You're like, well, I couldn't go that far, right? But to that person, it doesn't seem weird because their will is so strong that they know that for them, the delayed gratification of living to 70, 80, 90 in great health, being around for their grandkids, being able to throw their kids around, me personally being able to be stronger than my kids for as long as humanly possible. It's a huge goal of mine, right? Like my kids will never beat me at anything as long as I can. And why? Because I want them to be the best version of themselves, and I have boys, and I always wanted to beat my dad. And when I was 13, I beat my dad in ping pong, and I'll never forget when I whooped him, and then I got stronger than him, and I was like, and it felt so good to do, and I'm like, but it made me work to get to that point. And I want to make my kids work until they're as old as possible to try to beat that. Okay, so that's my goal in life, right? So that builds this will. So what it starts with is small decisions and stacking up wins. Okay, we're going to go through a plan, but the plan doesn't work if you don't do it. And it's just as easy as saying no. That's all it is.
I actually listened to his talk on that.
Yes.
And he said it like, anytime you do something that you don't want to do.
Correct.
So when you're like, and it's true, because when you feel lazy, you just stay lazy.
Right.
But as
Right.
you start doing things,
Yes.
so it's just like, what is one thing I really don't want to do right now, but I'm going to do it anyway, and that it
Yes.
talks about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as soon as you do the thing you don't want to do,
Do it.
do it. That's the thing. So like coming out of this, that sounds like a good idea, but I don't want to do this. I don't want to take these supplements. I don't want to go get these foods. Do it. So you need good bacteria, right? So
It's worth it.
how do we start with doing getting good bacteria inside of our gut? Okay. So I'm going to talk about supplements a little bit, but the true reality is that you can't out supplement a bad diet. Okay. So you've got to change both. So taking some supplements can absolutely help, but you got to work on fixing your food first. Okay. So let's go through some gut healthy foods. And again, I wrote these down, so I'm going to kind of run through them with you guys. But they're written in this note packet, so you don't have to like burn your hand up writing. We have also an advanced nutrition talk that just went on our YouTube. So there's a lot of resources for you guys after this. Okay. Something I'm not going to do is spend like an hour talking about foods, because I've got so much information out there on it. There's some more high-level stuff I want to get to. But generally speaking, gut-healthy foods and clean foods need to be part of your day, all day, every day, okay? So when I look for healthy foods throughout a daily basis, it's really simple the way that I map out my meals. It's protein-rich and fiber-rich foods first. And then healthy fats are like a really like close second in my thought process. Like I have to have those things in my diet, okay? So I'm eating, and I love animal-based proteins. We could sit here and argue all day about animal-based versus plant-based, but if you're a guy in the room, you don't do a really good job converting plant fats into EPA and DHA, which are like your usable form of fats. So in my diet, I generally select for really healthy animal-based foods and products. So like free-range grass-fed or free-range eggs, grass-fed beef, wild-caught fish, free-range chicken, right? Like, so I'm getting pastured, whole forms of those things. High fiberness foods, so lots of vegetables. Low on the grain end. I don't eat hardly any grains. If I do at all, it's like a white rice that's made in like a short chain fatty acid, like a coconut oil. So it helps to break down the rice so that it's easily digestible. Doing lots of fermented foods, things like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, like as many probiotic-rich foods and prebiotic-rich foods as possible. So those need to be in your life. Polyphenol-rich foods, so your berries, your olive oil, your dark chocolates, green teas, foods that are high in polyphenols, they help with digestion, and they have lots of fiber in them as well. And berries especially are low on the glycemic index, so you're not getting this like high sugar boluses that are causing these massive spikes and deficits in blood sugars, okay? I do frozen berries and I do fresh berries. So I make a smoothie almost every day. My kids have a smoothie almost every day. Lots of fruits, lots of greens, clean proteins like our grass-fed whey or bone broth protein, all going in there, okay? So every meal you eat, it needs to feed you in some way, okay? So like, my thought is like, don't drink beverages that don't fuel something. Don't eat food that doesn't fuel something, okay? Like Coca-Cola, it doesn't do anything for your body. Like, it's a bolus of sugar. It's good for your tongue, but like it's terrible for your body, right? So if I can challenge you guys a little bit, like, don't eat for your tongue, right? Like, eating for your tongue is like, come on, right? Like, your whole body is at a deficit, but you're listening to your tongue? Like, come on, right? No offense. I'm talking to myself here. I'm talking to myself here. Grow up, okay? Grow up. My kids eat for their tongue, right? I'm old enough to know better, okay? Yeah.
You can eat those great foods, just add for your tongue the capsaicin and other stuff.
Yeah, and then also it's like you want to teach your body to crave the healthier things. So for a lot of us, we have this desire for sugar, right? In America, it's very commonly known we have something known as a sugar tax, where we have added sugar in almost all of our foods. And it's not for nothing. Food manufacturers aren't dumb. If they sold more products as they put less sugar in, they would do that. I'm not joking. They're for profits over everything. So they add sugar in because we like sweet, right? And so if we don't taste the food that we like, not you guys, everyone else out there, right? If we don't taste the food that we like with the sugar content, then we don't buy it, right? So there's this sugar tax where all the foods in America, by and large, have some added sugar, right? We vote with our dollars. So I'm preaching to the choir here that if you guys buy healthier foods, it makes it cheaper for me too. And it changes food manufacturing. And it starts with a small number of people, and the more and more people who do it, the better off we get when it comes to it, okay? So bone broth is also great. Got a little thing in here on bone broth. Tons of collagen, lots of amino acids. We get our bone broth from either the store, we go to Rebel to get bone broth, which is a place right down in Bridge Park. You can get like big tubs of them that are pre-made. I'll be honest, I love food prepping. I am not at the point in my life that I can sit for like hours and make some bone broth. People tell me all the time that it's super easy, but I've done it once and I was like, this is hard. I'm not. So I buy bone broth, self-admittedly. I'm sure when I have more time in my life, I'll get some. And then about 2 years ago in our office, we worked with a company to create a bone broth protein. So it's actually dehydrated bone broth, and I use that as my primary like protein when I'm making smoothies and things like that. It's absolutely awesome, and it's especially good for healing the gut. Fill your diet with omega-3 fatty acid-rich foods. So fatty fish, salmon, sardines, plant sources as well. So chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds. Those are all super high sources of omega-3 fatty acids. They support the gut lining, the health of it, its fastidiousness, and they also lower inflammation in the gut. Yes?
What's your opinion about the order of eating these nutrients, like proteins first, or?
So they all have to be there, right? But so they all have to be there. So it's not like I say one over the other. You want to look at what your day looks like in your nutritional life, right? Like, so in a morning, I'm going to get a good amount of protein because you have to have a good amount of protein with every meal. This isn't the talk for like longevity necessarily, but research shows that most people are deficient in protein. So if you're not getting enough protein, your muscles start to waste away, and your muscles control your hormones, and your hormones control the how do I put it? The ideas of like preventing aging, right? So people who have low muscle have lower testosterone, and testosterone helps prevent like your cells from breaking down faster, right? So protein is a mandate, like it's a number you have to hit every day, right? So, and if some of you guys have sat with me for nutrition consults, I talk about that, like your number is this. It's not like it's a percentage, it's like you need 40 grams of protein per meal. That's like your need, right? And then just around it, I know I gotta get a lot of greens and berries in the morning. I might be on the run for lunch. I do talks, I go to meetings, things like that, so I'm gonna try to find healthier things there, but like my breakfast is the most controlled thing. And then for lunch and for dinner, I'm trying to get as much protein in, clean fats, greens. Like those are the first things that I'm going for, if that makes sense, okay? And then my snacks in the middle are still based around that they have to have a benefit. So like if you look in our pantry, there's nothing that just like tastes good and doesn't have some type of benefit, right? So like my snacks might look different than someone's. They're like seaweed wraps, like what do they call that, nori or whatever. They're like protein bars that are like healthier versions of them. They're, you know, super dark chocolate with like nut butters, right? Like they all have something. They're healthy fats with the clean proteins, right? I don't just have sugar in there for no reason because then I'm gonna eat it, and I'm like a fiend. Like you guys don't know. Like if I'm around it for a long enough time, like and I'm hungry enough, I will eventually eat it. So a rule with this is like you don't go grocery shopping hungry. That's like the number one rule. If you go grocery shopping hungry, you're destined to fail. Because I don't trust myself in the store. So I go full, and I'm disciplined, and I read the labels, and my kids do the same thing. And like they can have one bad thing, and that's it. And when it's gone, it's gone.
One bad thing a month?
I usually do, no. I mean, it's when we go to the store, so they go with us maybe once a month. You know what I mean? And it's not even that bad. So bad means like it's a little more unhealthy, but like artificial colors, Artificial sweeteners, like they're not getting those. Like, so they'll come to me and they'll say like, I think this is better, and then I'll read it, and I'll be like, it's not even on the list. Like, there's bad, which is like not as bad, and then there's like no, like flat out no. Like the basic fruit snacks that are like filled with yellow 5 and red 40, all these things, like that's just not even on the list. Like this is below something that I would consider you putting food in your body, right?
And a fun thing that we've done with our kids is rather than us telling them no, they walk around with our phone with a scanner now. There's a lot of great apps like EWG or Yuka that you scan the barcode, it'll give the food a score. So it's fun for my kids to like walk around the store and scan things and like, oh mom, this got a bad score. So I'm not going to say no.
That's awesome.
They're just like, oh, I can't have that.
That's like a game.
It is.
Yeah, they like it actually.
What were the
So
apps then?
Yuka, so
Yuka.
YUKA and then
Yep,
EWG.
EWG. EWG is the environmental working group, and they've put out stuff for the last 15, 20 years that's been great, and now they have an app. And it's also great for like personal hygiene products. You can scan those too. And they're really clear about what's good, what's bad, and when it's bad, they say what bad ingredients are in it. So a lot of this when it's confusing, like use those more, lean on those, and then once you get the habit of it, then you don't have to be this person in the store doing this for every product. But like when you go for the first time, spend an extra 30 minutes to an hour in the store, scan all your stuff, and you'll become more and more educated on it, right? Okay, cool. All right, so a couple other things that I wanted to add in, and this is the best spot to add them in. So when it comes to lifestyle change, another big thing is sleep quality, okay? So if you don't sleep well, it's nearly impossible to get good gastrointestinal health. However, sometimes you can't sleep well because your gut is bad, and I understand that, okay? But striving towards getting better sleep should be at the top of your list when it comes to it. And so if you are having sleep issues or problems and you haven't been able to figure them out on your own, talk to me, talk to a medical professional, because it's really hard to have a good functional gut and to heal well and to achieve your health goals if you are deficient in sleep. It is a mandate for regeneration, and 98% of us need at least 7 hours of sleep per night. There's a very small percentage of people that can survive on less than that, and it's probably not you, okay? So when you don't sleep well, it increases cortisol levels, it decreases your production of testosterone. People are visibly weaker a day after losing sleep. Like if they did tests on people, and you're physically weaker if you don't sleep well the next day. Your brain fog is higher, it impairs gut metabolism, and so working on improving your sleep is a really important thing, okay? So if your sleep is off, when I work with patients, one of the first things we focus on is how do we target and improve your sleep. One of the things that I love using is 5-HTP, or 5-hydroxytryptophan. I wrote it on here for you guys too. It's in our sleep and mood supplement. And in people with more severe cases, we order a higher dose of that. It's a precursor for dopamine and serotonin, which helps regulate your sleep-wake cycles. So sometimes a person who can't sleep well, who has gut issues, doesn't sleep well, so their gut issues get worse, and then their sleep issues get worse. And it's this horrible cycle where you can't break it. And so we work on breaking it a lot of times using like a sleep and mood supplement that has melatonin, 5-HTP, which helps your body create those metabolites because your gut can't create them because it's not as healthy. And so you can't take straight dopamine or serotonin, your body will reject it. You have to take the precursors for it. So what we work on doing is raising the level of those neurotransmitters just so that it can better help you regulate your sleep-wake cycles, right? So it's like more of a simple thing that you can start implementing if you do have some sleep issues. With 60 to 70% of our patients, that alone can help to get your sleeping better. So if you're doing the right things in your lifestyle and environment, you actually start to sleep better through there, okay? So it's called Sleep and Mood, and I wrote it in here in the note packet for you guys. Exercise. Exercise is an absolute mandate when it comes to gut health, and I didn't have the studies on it, but now I have the studies on it. Athletes, new study, athletes who are working out successively, they have higher measurable levels of healthy gut bacteria. So there's a bacteria called Akkermansia muciniphila that's linked to better overall metabolic health. So it's like having that willpower to say yes when you maybe don't want to, and knowing that it's better for you. We know that working out, exercising appropriately does in fact help your GI tract work better. It helps everything in your body, but specifically for a GI talk, helps your GI system work better, okay? And we'll do some more talks on that, especially as the new year comes. We usually do like a big fitness and goal setting workshop in the office. And so now that we have a bigger office, you guys can spread out a little bit. Is this fun, by the way? Is this nice? We had a shoebox before. This is like, we can spread out a little bit. So we'll do a couple workshops in the beginning of around the new year on working out, fitness. We'll go through all the protocols on how to optimize your fitness regime, how to get the balanced mix between cardio, strength training, and HIIT training. But generally speaking, you've got to exercise, okay? Hot and cold exposure. So we know that exposing yourself to hot and cold temperatures improves your body's affinity to adapt to its environment. So doing things like cold baths or ice baths or cold showers or doing sessions in a sauna is very helpful for not only your gut but for your overall health. It helps increase mood, helps with body fat burning as well. So I think that incorporating those things into your life are really important, okay? It's like doing hard things would be sitting in a hot sauna for a while or sitting in a cold bath, but it's that same thing that activates your mid-cingulate cortex to say, I have willpower, I can do anything I want to, right? Because you're willingly subjecting yourself to things that others will perceive as hard. Does anyone love a cold bath? Anyone love ice baths? No, I don't at all. So, but they're helpful for you, okay? Stress management, okay? This gut-brain axis is real. So what you worry about between your two ears, whether it's real or not, is real in your body, okay? And so psychiatrists agree that about 85% of what we worry about is in the future and is not gonna happen, okay? So just be careful with your own internal and mental thoughts. This is a bit of a counseling session right now, but just work on those things, okay? Realize that the way you think, the self-talk that you give to yourself, it does matter. It is important, okay? And so, number one, as we get out of this, give yourself some grace, okay? It's a hard world we live in. We all have stress. We all have families. We all have lives. There's no one I've ever talked to who's just like hunky-dory, like I have nothing going on in my life, okay? And it seems as time goes on, we think things are gonna get easier and then they don't, right? But that's just what we signed up for. At least we're not fighting off tigers every day or living in a cave, right? We get to have first world problems, and so not to make them any easier, but we got to do our best at staying mentally strong and not letting our problems overwhelm us, because you can't pour out of an empty cup, okay? So work as much as you can, work with the counselors, therapists, whatever you need to work on that healthy gut-brain axis, positive mental health talk, or mental self-talk, okay? Last thing is timing of foods. So fasting and time-restricted eating can be really helpful for improving gut health. From a couple perspectives, number one is when you time-restrict eating, it makes it really easy to not overeat, okay? Can you overeat if you're only eating 8 hours a day? You sure can. It's a little bit harder to do though, okay? When you fast as well, it increases something in the body known as autophagy. So autophagy is when your body runs out of food to digest, and then your body is free to use its resources to do other things. And what we know is that your body is really, specifically speaking, it's adapted to going periods of time without eating, okay? And we didn't have access to refrigeration and food all the time until a century or so ago. And so when you're without food, that's when your body scavenges for free radicals. That's when it starts killing off bad or deleterious or cancer cells, okay? So if you've never done it before, incorporating some type of intermittent fasting can be really helpful to jumpstart your health towards better gut health. It's not like you have to fast for 20 hours a day or go on a 3-day fast. Something as simple as a 12 to 14 hour fast is enough to start the needle when it comes to getting your body in that state of autophagy and killing off bad cells. Okay? You guys with me?
Yeah, I have
All
a
right.
question about that.
Go ahead.
So is it a better time of day to fast?
There's a lot of conflicting studies on it. Generally speaking, there's a little bit more towards morning, night into morning. It's also more doable for most people. The idea of like waking up and then having a meal and then fasting for the next 14 hours is kind of tough, right? So generally speaking, you use your sleep as a way to start your fast, and then you continue the fast in the morning and then break it a little bit later in the morning. But there's other people who do it different ways, but I say that's the most widely accepted way of doing it, if that makes sense. So you eat dinner at 7 p.m. and then you do it again the next morning until 9 or 11, which is a 14 or 16 hour fasting window. A little more doable.
That's
okay?
what I
It
do.
is.
Okay. Yeah.
I do that, and it's just kind of a routine.
Yeah, it's a little easier to do it that way, especially, okay? And then you always break your fast with protein.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
So the one downside of fasting, is that your body will start to catabolize muscle, start to break down muscle after a little while, right? So when you break your fast, breaking it with a good amount of protein will stop that muscle breakdown from happening. So no matter who you are, like you need to keep your muscles around, right? Like that's very important for longevity. So break a fast with protein, at least. Other stuff too, but protein has to be in there, yes.
Do you have a recipe for what your
Like a morning
smoothie in the
protein.
morning?
Yeah, I do. I can send it out. But it is real simple. It's
I want to.
protein greens. So either like leafy greens or like our greens powder, right? Frozen berries. I prefer the ones without seeds. So I don't do raspberries and blackberries, and I think if you do in your smoothies, you're a savage. Because they get stuck in your teeth.
Yeah.
So I just don't know who does those things. So I don't do the mixed berries, I do blueberries, strawberries, and cherries. Or a blend of them. I just have them all in my freezer, whatever I'm feeling that morning I do, right?
Okay.
And then I do either like a grass-fed milk, or I do a coconut milk as a base, or I do a yogurt as a base, like a plain yogurt as a base. I do water, and then I might add like a little bit of like peanut butter or nut butter, or chia seeds or hemp seeds or flax seeds. I have all of those, and I just kind of mix and mash them, so my kids think they're different smoothies, but they're really the same smoothie. They're just slightly different, and my kids have smoothies with me in the morning.
Use the
Yeah.
protein powder.
Yeah, I use the bone broth protein typically.
Can I ask you a question about the yogurt?
Mhm.
I like yogurt.
Good.
Now I read all the stuff, and you read ingredients on the thing, it's loaded with sugar.
Well,
So,
plain.
Is that throw it out, right?
No, you get the plain yogurt. Don't get the flavored yogurt.
But it's
Because
not
you-
good.
What?
It doesn't taste good.
So is there a
Hold the
recommended,
tape back a little bit, please.
is there a recommended brand of yogurt that you use?
Yeah, I mean, I can't even say the brands right now. Stonyfield. I mean, if you go in the store, I don't buy the little ones up top. I buy the big tubs
Yeah.
at the bottom.
Like the Greek yogurt?
It can be
or-
Greek, but
It has to be
Greek has to
plain.
do with the consistency. So the Greek versus regular doesn't matter as much. Just being honest, I want it to be organic or grass-fed. Okay. In all honesty, I think my favorite one is like the organic grass-fed one from Aldi. That's plain.
Really?
Yeah, no joke. Aldi's good.
And it's in a smoothie,
Yeah,
so
it's in a smoothie.
You
can
won't,
taste-
yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter
Tasting the
that,
fruit, yeah.
But I do it without a smoothie too. And
Well,
if
I like
you-
to eat it.
and
I
if-
like to
Well,
do
yeah,
it.
and if you add a little bit of fruit to it, and you add a little bit of like a like I add like a stevia, or I add like a little bit of like a whey protein powder to it that has some flavor to it. That's like more concentrated, or like vanilla extract. It's
You
great.
put chia seeds in it, right, in your yogurt?
Yeah, they don't necessarily add the flavor, but
Yeah,
yeah. But I do that too. Yeah,
blueberries.
blueberries. Like you look a little fruit still. I don't know. Sure.
raw honey.
Fine.
Just sweeten
A little
it
bit.
with a little bit of
I'm
raw
fine with it.
honey.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you can
It
never
doesn't
have
take a
sugar.
lot
Like
of
I'm.
honey to make it
Yeah.
fescue.
Sugar, some sweet, some carbohydrates is not the worst thing for you, as long as they're in moderation and they're intelligently done. You can definitely way overdo sugar. The vast majority of us way overdo sugar, but doing moderate amounts of that is fine. So like if you get a sweetened yogurt, it's going to be maybe 30 grams of protein per 6-ounce serving, which by weight is double that of a can of Coke. Okay, just so we're clear. Whereas if you add a little bit of honey and some berries, you're going to be adding fiber, enzymes to help break that down as well, with maybe 10 grams of sugar. I'd rather you do that than the other side. Does it create more work and preparation? Absolutely, but it's better in the long run.
How about eggs?
Love them. Eat them all.
What about apples?
As many eggs as possible. Apples are great.
And, sorry, for
You're
the
okay.
folks that might have like reflux and stuff, what kills me is if you read about low acid foods, it's all the berries that you're putting in. You know what I mean? So not only on top of what they're telling us, now they're saying don't eat all those healthy things because it's gonna make your GERD worse,
Yes.
as long as you're on medication.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
It's like fix the gut first and then it's better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah, apples are great. So I love them. You want the lower sugar apples or like Granny Smiths, but apples are great. They've got lots of fiber in them. Again, I rarely hear of people who overdo apples, right? Like it's not, again, there's like Novo classifications of foods, and like a Novo class 1 food is just the food in its raw form. And it's like, I don't know anyone who eats so many apples that they have a problem. Right? It just generally doesn't happen because it's packed with fiber, it slows digestion, It's got volume and substance to it, but like you can chug a 24-ounce apple juice and like be fine, and it's the sugar of like 8 apples, right? Like that's when you have problems, when you're drinking sugar, when you're drinking things that are manufactured in a way that makes you just crave more. And the problem we have with food now is that there are food scientists, hundreds of them, the other side of your food aisle, you don't see, that are designing food so that you can't eat just one. Like the Lay's, right? Okay, cool. All right, so we're gonna talk through 4 R's to gut healing. So this is a generalized protocol that we use on a lot of our patients. It is not exclusive to saying that this will absolutely help you with all of your issues, but we've spent about 7 or 8 years now formulating and working on helping this to be very helpful for the vast majority of our patients, okay? So there's 4 phases to healing the gut, okay? Number 1 is an optional phase depending on the person. But oftentimes we have unwanted bad bacteria, yeast, or parasites inside of our gut, okay? And so the step 1 is removing the bad bacterium from the digestive tract, okay? So when we do that, we use something known as GI remove, okay? It removes the bad critters, it removes the parasites, the candida yeast overgrowth. It's a combination of herbal and botanical blends and nutrients that help detoxify the body essentially, okay? And so for a lot of people, if you have intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is the vast majority of us, we don't start with like, hey, take a probiotic. We actually go the opposite direction. We're actually going to reduce the amount of bacterium in your gut at first to get it down to a manageable level, and then we'll work on kind of building it up, okay? So step 1 of what we use is a GI remove. And again, on here, I made this chart because, again, gut healing can be confusing. So at the end of this, there will be a chart that actually shows you guys like how to walk through and do this. And again, I'm here, my team is here, we're here to answer your questions through it for you and make it a doable thing as well, okay? But so typically with people, if you want to kill the bad bacteria inside of your gut, we use a specialized formulated blend called GI Remove to help break these things down and start killing off the bad bacteria inside of your gut, okay? The next step of what we use is something known as GI repair, okay? And so if someone has a damaged gut microbiome, like if this isn't healthy through here, there are certain foods that we can eat, like okra, like marshmallow root, that can help to strengthen and repair the gut lining, okay? So we use a GI repair, it's like a smoothie blend that like just instantizes in water, and we use this to help just nurture and restore those intestinal mucosal cells, okay? Now for most people, they do really well on this, but for some people, if you're killing the gut, like an unhealthy gut, you'll have symptoms of die-off. So when you start killing bacterium inside of your gut, especially unwanted ones, the result is there's some stress in your GI tract. Stress is the best way to put it. It can lead to like bloating, fatigue. Your liver has to work harder to kind of break those cells down. Your lymphatic system is kind of digesting and breaking those out of your body as well. And so using a glutathione support, I'll show you guys what it is. Something like a pro-NAC or an N-acetylcysteine can help with that. So what this is, you gotta know we're going to need some science here, but NAC or cysteine is a semi-essential amino acid, meaning your body can make it, but under times of stress, your body can become deficient in this really quickly. This is what your liver uses to make glutathione, which is your body's most powerful antioxidant. So it helps reduce oxidative stress inside of your body, okay? Anytime you're going through something where your immune system is in overdrive, so this would mean like killing bad bacteria inside of your gut, fighting off disease, or people when we had COVID, right? This is what we commonly use. You couldn't even find this during COVID. The FDA almost scheduled it and put it behind the shelves at the pharmacies because there was a national shortage on it. But it's your rate limiting step to making the antioxidants that help prevent your body against aging too fast, right? So if you're under a time of stress, killing off bad bacteria inside of your gut, having this in your cabinet's a really great tool to have. It also helps to break down extra mucus production. So like for patients who get sick or like sinusy congested, especially around this time leading into December, this is what we use because it helps to thin out mucus and it helps to help build up your liver so that you kill the bad stuff, foreign crap.
What is that called?
Question?
How long is the GI remove phase and the GI repair phase?
It's for a certain person, it's usually between 4 to 8 weeks is the length of it, okay? But it's in your note packet as well. At the bottom of it, I've written it out.
Do you have any more note, by the way?
Do I do what?
No, any more note packets?
They're digital.
Oh.
Well, I'll get it to you. I'll get it to you. By the end of it, I'll put the thing back up. I have a QR code that you can download it on your phone.
Okay.
Because it was like 15 pages long.
Oh.
And I love you guys, but our printers are gonna die. Save the environment here. We've learned after doing this for a while. Okay, so the idea here is this, okay? So step one is you remove the bad stuff out of your gut, okay? And again, diet needs to be clean during this time, okay? So if you're starting on this, diet needs to be clean during this time. So generally speaking, most people who have a problem in their gut, at some point it happened because of overconsumption of sugar. So when we're taking someone through this, we want you guys to be as close to the advanced plan as possible, okay? So when a lot of you guys who are patient started, or if you're guests, we'll get you guys the resources for this, and we'll get you scheduled for an evaluation time. You guys got a book when you started in our office that goes through Core and Advanced Plan. If you lost that book, if you Google Core Advanced Plan Max Living, it'll come up there, or we have more if you guys need them. We've got lots of resources for them. Advanced Plan is a sugar limiting diet that focuses on good healthy fats. So when you start with this, you want to try to make your diet as clean as possible so you're not damaging yourself as fast as you're healing, if that makes sense, okay? It's not like you have to eat extremely strict forever, but in the beginning it helps so much if you stop fueling the fire, if you cut off the oxygen supply, okay? Then you're repairing, so you're strengthening the gut lining. So we will either use GI repair, or we will also use a peptide. If you're looking at like your pricing thing, some people who are really sensitive to the GI repair, you'll know if you try it. It's rare, but it happens sometimes, or we need a stronger one, we'll use peptides. So peptides are more recent advances in science. I love them. They're short chain amino acids that tell your body what to do. Our body talks using protein like you and I would talk using English. So BPC 157, it sounds like I'm talking French maybe, KPV, those are peptides that help to heal your gut microbiome, and they do it very rapidly. And what we're starting to see now is that patients with like celiac disease, for example, using BPC 157 helps to heal the celiac issue. So I have patients now who will, after using that, can eat gluten and not have the sensitivity issue. Not that I recommend they do that all the time, but if they accidentally eat gluten, they're fine. Really interesting, cool thing, okay? So helpful, in fact, that the FDA scheduled them 11 months ago and stopped their production. And it was a huge, if you're in the natural health world, it was a huge public outcry.
Wait, they stopped people?
Well, they scheduled them. So they scheduled them as a potentially hazardous substance with no data to support it. And for 8 months, they stopped the production of it. They told the compounding pharmacies, if you fill these requests from doctors, we're gonna come after you. And in July, though, due to overwhelming requests, the compounding pharmacies flipped off the FDA and said, sorry, and said, we're doing it. So since July, we've actually had them back now. So it's a thing. So basically what happens, and this is a total sidetrack, but when something becomes beneficial in the world, in the world of medicine or health, if it doesn't make a wave, no one cares about it. But when it starts to make enough of a wave that it dents the profits of major pharmaceutical corporations, they're either going to do one of two things. They're going to kill it or they're going to absorb it. And there's like no other thing. It's gonna happen. They're too big right now to fail. So they looked at them and they don't make any money off of them. So the only way that they can make money off of a peptide, which is an amino acid, which is a naturally found substance, is they patent a brand name for it and limit it to only a brand name, or they patent the formulation strategy for it. And if they patent the formulation strategy for that, they can tell their compounding pharmacies that they don't own, but they control 80% of their profits. They can say, you have to use this formulation strategy, it's the highest yield probable, so we make money off of it. So they schedule them, and then they figure out what they need to do to make money, and then they re-release them into the wild. That's how things work. Just so you guys, this isn't a unique thing. This has been around for 40 or 50 years right now, right?
We didn't know or didn't care.
Yeah, it just happens behind the scenes, right? But with social media now, with the internet, with wide access to technology, and the gap between research coming out and its access to us is the shortest it's ever been. We see things that should be happening way before they should happen. And when something like this happens, now in social media, it can be put out to millions of people right away, right? And so then the researchers get a hold of it, and people like Huberman and those people, they can have the researchers on their podcast, which is downloaded by millions of people, and then you get this massive pushback. And so that's what happened. So like my patients who have celiac who are taking this or who are going through gut healing protocols who can't get it are writing and complaining and putting it on there, and then it influenced the compounding pharmacists to say, we're just gonna release them. Do what you want with us. but they can't stop. You know what I mean? So anyways, so it's a war for health, man, I'm telling you guys. So this is not like a small thing. This happens on such a deep level. The NP, so we have an NP in our office who works for us, and he was in emergency care at the Cleveland Clinic for years. And when we started using these protocols on patients, like using peptide protocols, we started seeing these disease processes reverse. And he works up in Cleveland and I work here, and we share patients back and forth. And he's got his ER doctors and the gastroenterology team like asking, like, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing these things? And we're just like, we're not telling you anything, because whatever we tell you, we're gonna lose it. You know what I mean? So just like, so this is our secret sauce
Well,
here.
would you say that that was the same thing that happened with semaglutide? Or is that kind of different?
It was 30 peptides, but semaglutide didn't get banned. Semaglutide, who's heard of that? The weight loss injection? That's another type of peptide, but since it's patented and branded, it didn't get banned. But 20 out of the other 30 peptides got banned, got scheduled. Well, they didn't get banned, they got scheduled. That's potentially hazardous.
What does that mean?
It means the FDA can, the FDA is a different like categories that they put what they call drugs or substances into, and they have like green light, potentially hazardous, banned. And so there's called a Schedule 2 or a Zone 2 where they park things that they don't have approved but haven't also found enough evidence that they're bad. And they kind of park them there, and it allows them to kind of triage them and decide if they want to approve them or ban them. But a lot of times what happens is larger pharmaceutical corporations will influence the FDA to put them into there because they're not making money what you should have done in the first place, right? Versus healing the joint. But those have been approved by insurance. They're easy to do. They're in every hospital system right now, as you get a steroid injection for a joint problem. And so they're going to continue status quo until they find something to replace it, even though the research shows that it's ineffective, right? But so it might take 10 to 20 years before that happens, and then you'll see the commercials online with the lawyers saying, if you ever accepted an injection for this, just call this number. You may be entitled to compensation without having to go to court of law, right? Like, you know what they're saying, right? Like, that's what happens, exactly. I know, yeah, but it's like, well, because they have this factored in. We're gonna lose $1 billion over here in court cases, but we're gonna make $15 billion. Sorry, it's profits over people. You know what I mean? It is, because morally speaking, once something comes out that changes the way you should change your practice. But giant hospital systems are 10, 20, 30,000 people. It's like moving the Titanic versus moving a speedboat. They're slow to move, and they're also not going to move until they have the back end figured out. They're not going to just venture into the wild and the unknown, even though we're seeing that these nutritional things, these things help. They don't switch to them. So it's just what it is. Yeah. So back on track here. Sorry for the digression, but that was fun. So the last things. So once we've killed the bad bacteria inside of the gut, we've worked on healing the gut lining. Okay. Then we add in what's called a replace, and this doesn't have to be used in isolation, like in a bulk substance. Replaces digestive enzymes. So if you have like reflux, for example, digestive enzymes are extremely helpful. If you are malnourished, digestive enzymes are extremely helpful. Whenever we do lab tests on people, like our metabolics test, which tests for like nutrient deficiencies, and we see that people are deficient, we give them an enzyme. Why? Digestive enzymes help better break down food so that it's more easily absorbable by the body. And as we age, we tend to produce less stomach acid. And if our gut is not healthy, we don't absorb nutrients as much as we want. So really sometimes we're overfed, but we're starving at the same time. You know what I mean? We're not getting those nutrients in. So GI replace is the digestive enzymes, hydrochloric acid, which is an acid, helps break down food, and it helps get food to enter the small intestine more easily from the stomach. That's the whole idea of it, so it can be absorbed better, okay? So you can use that in isolation with meals, or if you're going through the gut healing protocol, phase 3 is, if you don't have a lot of upper issues, kill the bad, heal the gut, add in the enzymes to better break down the food so you absorb nutrients better, and then the last thing is you re-inoculate. So phase 4, the last phase, is re-inoculation. So that's when we're adding in the healthy bacterium back into the gut, okay? And so we've reformulated our probiotics. We used to use a 50 billion CFU probiotic formula. We now use a prebiotic, postbiotic, and probiotic, so like all the different strands of biotics. And then we use a 15 billion that's spore-based. What that means is that the spores will not be broken down at all in the acid of the gut, and so they're kind of released in the small intestine. is kind of the newer technology on how to get the best type of probiotics into your small intestine and large intestine. Okay, so if you guys have been here as patients for a while, we used to have a 50B probiotic. That's what we used to use. It was essentially packed with 75 billion CFUs of probiotics, and they list them as 50 because probiotics die in a container, they don't last forever. And now it's just a spore-based one. So the new high probiotic we have is called GI Replenish. Okay, which looks like this bad boy through here. That's the probiotic. Okay. So those are the phases of them, and then on where'd we go? Okay. So you asked the question like, how do you do this? So if you're having these GI issues and you want to actually go through a full 4-hour phase and protocol, this is what you do. Okay, we mapped it out for you guys. So you do the one thing that I have off on this is the microbiome support, which is the GI remove. The microbiome support is still up there, right? Or is it, okay, yeah, okay. So there's one thing I didn't talk about, that's Saccharomyces, that helps to kill off yeast. So you do the GI remove and the microbiome support, it's like right there, and then the next phase is repair. So typically it's 4 months or 4 weeks of just the remove and the microbiome support, and then 4 weeks of that with the GI repair, okay?
Oh,
And
but all three go together at that
they
point?
kind of overlap, if that makes sense, okay? So like you start one and then you add others, then the first one drops off. Now with the remove, it's best if you have a lab test, then you can see exactly how long you have to do it for. Generally speaking, for people, I recommend 4 to 8 weeks of the remove in the beginning. And then you switch to the repair and the replace. And then once you get to like month 3, then you add in a good probiotic. But so the idea here is you definitely, for most people, you don't start with a probiotic, you start with getting the microbiome settled, and then you add in a good probiotic. So once the consistency of the different bacteriums are all leveled out, like you have a good balance in your microbiome, then you add in the replenish to work on building that up.